The 2025 playoffs are in full swing, and we heard from Chaim Bloom this past week as he laid breadcrumbs as to what we could expect for the upcoming offseason. We'll get into our thoughts on that and more on this episode of the Viva Albertos podcast.
Smith corks one into right down the line. It may go. Go crazy, folks. Go crazy.
Breeze hits it in the air to center. We will see you tomorrow night.
This is the Viva Albertos podcast on SB Nation. Welcome into another episode of the Viva Albertos podcast. I am your host, Jake Wood, and as always, I'm joined by site manager Heather Simon, writers Gabe Simons and Scott Plaza. Today, we're going to discuss our thoughts on the end-of-season press conferences, and to help us do that, we're going to bring in one of the most recognizable and longest-running showrunners in the Cardinals content sphere. He's affectionately referred to as the Podfather. You can follow him on X at C70 and find his shows Meet Me at Musial and Gateway to Baseball Heaven on all streaming platforms. He is Daniel Shoptaw.
Come meet me at the Musial with Alan and Daniel. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Daniel, happy offseason, my friend. It's good to talk with you again.
It's good to talk to you. Good to be here on Viva, which is, the legendary platform for Cardinals. I think longest running is just another way to say oldest person around. So I appreciate you being tactful there, Jake.
Perhaps oldest, but most wisest. And the many of off seasons you have experienced in your Cardinal fandom, we are indeed in the midst of another one. And it is what so many Cardinals fans have been clamoring for. It's Chaim time. And I think we can both recognize what John Mozeliak accomplished as the president of baseball operations, and that it was also just time to acknowledge that it was time to move on and modernize. Daniel, what were your thoughts on Mo's exit interview last Monday?
I think for one, I think you acknowledged him. I think kind of Mo has, and he did when we were all together this summer. You don't get those very often. All right. You don't get a chance for a guy to just have his own type of exit interview as he walks out. So it was nice to have that chance to, kind of put a finality to it. I think Mo has been a very, very, very good GM/Povo, but it's also time for a new voice. And it's very, very nice that he appreciates that was needed as well.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Daniel there that, it's time that we gave him his flowers, both literally and figuratively, this summer. And I agree. I think it was about time for him to just move along, and he did so in a manner that we got to hear again firsthand how Chaim was there. And they think that's a benefit that he was there. And I agree that it kind of takes away one of the question marks as far as getting a new voice in. So the kind of less questions they have to answer this offseason, I think the better for all involved.
Gabe, Chaim said we're willing to make painful short-term decisions for long-term gains, but also admitted the Cardinals don't intend to concede anything and will still maintain a competitive roster. I think when Cardinals fans hear the word rebuild, it's synonymous with tanking in some ways, and the Cardinals aren't willing to strip it all the way down, and really nor should they. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Well, I mean, this point has been made before, but there's nothing really left to strip down that much, to be honest. I mean, they have a bunch of guys who are under team control for multiple years. You got Wilson Contreras, who doesn't seem willing to move. For the right, place, and if it makes sense for both parties, he'll move, but I'm skeptical that will happen. And then you have Arenado, and you have Sonny Gray. And Sonny Gray would really be the only trade that would be like, quote unquote, giving up in my mind. But even he would be like a 2 to 3 win pitcher. So I just feel like the reason why Cardinals fans might balk at rebuild, and why this is technically a rebuild, but like you're thinking strip to the Bears, like the Cubs back in the day. And we kind of already started that process a long time ago by just not signing free agents. So I don't know if we can expect the on-field product to change that much than we've seen the last 3 years, just with maybe less like a sign, like Actually, I don't know. We might even sign like a Sonny Gray or something this year, like like the equivalent of a Sonny Gray. So I don't even know if anything will look that different on the major league field personally.
I kind of have a question for all you guys about the Mozeliak press conference. Like, what would you feel watching his final press conference? Like, did you feel how you thought you would? Uh, is it like bittersweet? I don't know. maybe this is maybe this isn't the right question to ask all these baseball bros, but like how'd you guys feel watching the press
Baseball
conference?
bros.
Yeah,
that was
I
the
don't
part
know.
that
I don't know what to call you
I
guys.
was taken aback by. I don't know how much of a bro I am. I'm more of a nerd
All
than
these
anything, I
baseball
guess.
dudes.
Yeah.
But like, how did you feel? Because I mean, it's kind of, I don't know. It's been a long time. Like, that's really, this is, I kind of remember the Jeff, like, Luno era, but not that well. Not as well as I kind of only know John Mozeliak, and I don't know. It seems like this team has been losing a lot of its pillars of at least my fandom, with Molina and Wainwright, and kind of to a certain extent Albert Pujols. He's been gone for a while, but he's now fully retired. Like he doesn't play baseball anymore, so that's not even so. And then now John Mozeliak is kind of walking away. It just feels like it's an interesting time for the team, but also for as fans, especially like of our age. I don't know. I was wondering how you guys felt like seeing kind of going through this maybe for the first time, this like big transition on the team.
You know what's funny, Heather? I did watch the press conference and I remember nothing about it.
Yeah, well, that's why I didn't, because I'm like, I'll read about it. I can't, I don't have time to watch it. I think it's in the middle of the day. I was like, I have no way to watch this. I've got
I,
way too
I just
so
had the same feelings that I had whenever I watch a Mo interview, at least in the last few years, where I'm always confused like why everybody hates his interviews.
yeah.
I never understood that.
He never
Maybe it was
gives
just
us
because I saw him in person, but like I've never understood why everybody's like, oh, he's so condescending. I'm like, all right, you're seeing something I'm just not
Yeah,
seeing.
right.
I always felt the same thing when I was sitting in the room whenever he was talking to us. Was always like, I don't ever get condescending or talking down. It was always like, well, yeah, he speaks differently in a different way than most Midwesterners do, but I never
Mhm.
got the connotation that he was like talking down to me.
I will say, I mean, I did watch it or watched it right afterwards, and I started writing um, the summer before Mo took over, so I do remember the transition to Mo. And so, yeah, I think Heather's right that it is a pillar that is being lost, but it is we've been in this process for so long.
Mhm.
We've known that, since this time last year that Mo was leaving for sure. And, once Heim Bloom was hired, even before that, the writing was a little bit on the wall. So I think we've had enough time to kind of process a little bit of it that I wouldn't say it was emotional to see him, walk off the podium for the last time. Definitely not like a player leaving the field, but it was a significant moment in Cardinal history. This was the end of an era and a new one starting.
And I don't know if I wrote this or if I decided not to exactly frame it this way, but I kind of wanted more for him in his last season.
Mm-hmm.
Him to kind of be able to go out on top in a way. And I think that's also why it is sort of a bummer of a season is he didn't really get to have that, but also it's kind of through decisions that he partially made. So so it's like, well, that's I mean, I guess you can't just get something because you want it, but I kind of because the Cardinals have been headed this way for a minute now, so it would have taken probably something pretty surprising things for them to make the postseason out of nowhere. But I just was like, man, maybe there's just a little bit more of that Cardinals devil magic left there to get Mo like one last sort of something as on his way out. But so it kind of makes it's I guess what I'm trying to say is like he's had a heck of a career as a baseball management of what is the word I'm trying to think of? Not official. What are the like
Executive.
as a executive? Thank you. It's like what is that word? He's had a heck of a career, and I feel like I don't know. I don't want these last few seasons to put into, and I don't know if it does, but I don't want that to put into question truly what he has been able to do in St. Louis because it is really impressive that sort of sustained run of success for so long. Like of course it's not going to hold up forever. Like of course it won't. So I kind of wanted something like worthy of the what he has actually created for him to kind of go out on because it does seem like people remember what you've done for me lately versus the body of work and the body of work is impressive and with this mid-market team and I have to give him a lot of credit.
I think he'll get more respect as we get farther away from now.
Yeah.
Like when we have a little more
Right.
distance, you can see it from a more objective viewpoint. So, but right now,
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be a few years until you're going to get your wish on that one because a lot of people do not like John Mozak right now.
Yeah. I know it just doesn't feel fair, but well, life's not fair.
Well, I think a lot of these past two seasons too, with knowing that he's on the way out, and especially this past year, knowing that he is done, I think there was a little bit more vocal, like kind of outspoken by both manager Ali Marmol, like calling out management a little bit more than we're used to in the past because we're just used to Mosaic like being there, and that's kind of how the things went. But then you also kind of hear the Mo kind of saying his hands are tied at points. And I think this
Yeah.
year, I think fans, myself especially, I think now that I've been covering the team in some capacity just for a year, seeing that, like, you know what, maybe Mo is pretty successful in doing what he did while not having a lot of the resources to do so. But these past 2 years, like we've been able to hear like just kind of more finger pointing at the top because I think he's not too worried about like what people are going to think. Like, hey, I did what I could with what I had. And Marmol kind of said the same thing, like I'm doing what I can with what I have. And I think that kind of makes the extended run of success, like you're saying, Heather, all more impressive because
Yeah.
he's been doing it for so long the same way. And the reason that they kind of got passed up is because other teams adjusted and the Cardinals didn't. So like it's just been that consistency of Cardinals baseball that now we're gonna have an off season where we're gonna be hit with a lot of uncertainties for the first time, I think.
Yeah, Scott, you bring up a really good point, mentioning all enacting the name Oliver Marmol because we also found out this past week that Ollie will be retained for 2026. Daniel, I did want to get your thoughts on that. Are you still have a vote of confidence in what you're seeing from Ollie Marmol, or were you a little bit disappointed that it didn't go in a different direction?
No, I have no problems with Ollie Marmol. I think he's done a fine job. I don't, and again, it also depends on your thoughts on how much a manager actually has an impact on, the game itself. But I don't remember just a ton of questionable calls like we have seen maybe in the past with the managers. There's always going to be why did he do this or why did he do that, but that's the nature of the game. I think for the most part, he manages bullpen well and he's done what he can with what he can. And, if you want to look at some of the other things, it's like they've probably overperformed at times over the last couple of years. So yeah, I feel like it makes sense to let him, get another run, especially as he's got that development background and that's what you're trying to do. So I don't know, there's that talk of maybe they'll put an extension on him or I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if that's the right move, but letting him come back this year makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really get what would be the purpose of moving on from him just to install another name in the middle of a rebuild. I don't think that makes much sense. Some of the core things you hear from players like playing for him, he gets the most out of what little the roster that is provided for him. There are certain things that every manager is going to do that fan bases are going to get irritated with. But, generally, I think that the spots he was doing on KMOX throughout the year was a really smart thing of he and of the Cardinals, public relations to recognize and do, because just having that extra expanded opportunity to listen to him, kind of go over his thoughts on certain moves and not just as he describes it, a 5-minute clip of him pissed off after a loss. Like it helps more roundedly form that opinion of him rather than just, reacting to a headline, so to speak. Scott, I know you had thoughts on Ollie being retained in a positive way. So just if you want to go ahead and kind of expound a little bit further on why you think Ollie is right for 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both of you kind of just pointed to it, that it makes just the most sense to keep him there. He's had a career in player development, minor league. He's been with the staff since I think 2021. And I think Skip Schumacher, Daniel Descalso, John Jay, all like well-regarded coaches that have all enjoyed working for him. So it's obvious that it seems like he can hold a room, he can hold a staff even in uncertain times. We've heard when he had Dusty Blake or Brant Brown on those KMOX spots, they seem to kind of speak similarly, and kind of be on the same page with everything. And I know I asked the question the other day of like, who would you replace Marmol with? And would that person say yes? And kind of the only thing that I was responded with that I agreed with was Skip Schumacher. But he's obviously going to Texas now. So again, I've been bringing up like the season of inconsistencies and the question marks this offseason. If you can just keep one thing the same, with Marmol, since I believe it was Gabe that just said the on-field product's going to be very similar anyway, why not just keep rolling with that and then try to see if this level of kind of production and development can hit in this next offseason going into 2026.
I'd be curious to hear everyone else's thoughts on this, but you referenced Skip Schumacher and being named the manager in Texas. Do you think that Skip would pass over the opportunity to manage a more like complete ready-made team in Texas and skip out on, coming back to St. Louis to manage here? I mean, I feel like he likes St. Louis, but I don't know that he would pass up on a better opportunity to win with a better roster and forego Texas. So I don't know that like that answer really works for me. Like, yeah. That's just my opinion. People are free to think how they want, but I don't know that Skip would pass on Texas just for the sake of. And it's the same argument with like Yachty and Albert and whoever other former player that fans like to bring up or invoke in that spot. It's like, I don't know that they would look at this roster, this opportunity, and say that's something I want to, stick my neck out on the line for. And I think it is commendable, at least, that Ollie's willing to say the hard things and say, we're growing in this and we're trying to get it back to a point where we're kicking people's asses on a regular basis and not just trying to sneak into the playoffs. I think that he is fully invested in that, and that is something that Cardinals fans, to an extent, should embrace. Now, I get that certain people just don't like him just because they don't like him, and that's all well and good, but again, I think there's something to be said for that he's willing to get his hands dirty and stick and want to stick it out through the time where it's not going to be what we know as quote-unquote Cardinals baseball.
I want it noted that Jake is the one that said skip out on this and not me.
Yeah.
Okay. Point that out.
I punished this podcast with that. Punished. Got it. So, Gabe, I recently did some investigating, and I think that we can draw a parallel to a self-admitted mistake that John Mozeliak said he made in 2019, and I'll explain more as I get into this. I believe the Cardinals have a choice this offseason between Brendan Donovan and Nolan Gorman. And to me, that will be where this new front office will tell me just what the timeline they think they'll be working with. I think it'll be another Randy Arozarena, Tyler O'Neill fork in the road moment between the steady, consistent, above league average production type player like Brendan Donovan, who compares to a Randy Arozarena, and a high upside promise that may or may not ever pop, very boom or bust at the big league level, like a Nolan Gorman, who compares to a Tyler O'Neill. Because if they think that they can be a playoff team within the next 3 years, and I understand that Brendan Donovan only has 2 years of team control left, I think they should extend Brendan Donovan, and assuming they are able to pull off a Nolan Arenado trade, I think that Donovan and Weatherholt should be the players playing second and third every day. I do have some numbers to reference here, and Daniel, you've heard this, or you've read this little spiel that I have going in the shout out to the Talking About Birds crew. Their birds scored. Brendan Donovan actually had a higher slugging percentage this season than Nolan Gorman at 422 compared to Nolan Gorman's 370 slugging percentage. Brendan Donovan had a 119 weighted runs created plus. Nolan Gorman only had an 88 WRC plus. Donovan's slugging percentage compared to all other players on the team, Donovan ranked fourth on the of all of the qualified hitters on the Cardinals roster. He ranked eighth among primary second basemen in slugging percentage, and he was also fifth in weighted runs created plus among 22 qualified second basemen in all of Major League Baseball. Now, my argument is that he should be considered the favorite for the third base job once Nolan Arenado is traded out, because if you look at his numbers and how they compare to third baseman, he would be eighth in slugging percentage as a primary third baseman, and he would be sixth in weighted runs created plus among all 18 qualified third basemen. What are your thoughts on that information? Do you think that the Cardinals should extend Brendan Donovan, or do you think that they should trade Brendan Donovan and lean into the boomer bust variability that exists in a Nolan Gorman profile?
I don't know if I completely accept the comparison to Tyler O'Neill versus Arozarena, and the main reason why is because Arozarena had all 6 years left, and O'Neill had like 5 years left of team control. And then this time we're comparing a very short-term guy, at least if he's not extended, versus Gorman has more team control, or less team control left than either of the two guys in the comparison.
Yeah, he has.
O'Neill.
So Donovan has 2 years of team control. Gorman has 3.
Right. So that's a tricky thing to answer, because I don't know if that's the choices between those two, and I know why you would think that. It's because you could lump in Burleson and Nootbaar with that group and say like one or two of these guys have to go. And I'm in a place where I haven't exactly given up on Nolan Gorman, but I'm perfectly fine to see him go. But I also think I wish I knew what Brendan Donovan's real trade value was, to be honest, because I really would love to know what he would get, because I don't want to trade him for something that isn't like, just throwing it out there, like a top 100 prospect or something. Like,
right.
If that's not on the table, I don't necessarily feel like I want to remove the leadership aspect. And then I would also be curious to know what kind of extension he'd be willing to sign. Like there's too much information I don't know to be able to properly answer that question, unfortunately. But Brendan Donovan is obviously the better bet and the better player for now. So I don't know how to answer that, I'll be honest.
So I think the common theme amongst Cardinal fans is they would prefer to hold on to Nolan Gorman just because he has the higher power potential. But then I make the argument that Donovan produced a higher slugging percentage, so was producing a more valuable slug rate than Nolan Gorman is. And are you willing to bank on the potential of what could be, as opposed to the proven commodity who has shown it year after year in a consistent basis and is steadily improving on the power aspect? I think his doubles are going up as time goes on. And just kind of another point to kind of point to, look at the Brewers, look at the Blue Jays, two teams who are winning and doing it like in spectacular fashion in the playoffs right now. Like, yeah, they're getting some slug, but their ability to have 1 through 9 guys who do not strike out at a 30 to 40% clip like a Nolan Gorman, and being able to continuously hit and keep that lineup rolling over and over again. If you have both Weatherholt and Donovan in that lineup, that contributes to that seemingly new shift in trend and where baseball seems to be going.
I'll say this though, the slugging percentage is pretty much average related. Gorman still had more power if you go by isolated, which is slugging minus average. I just want to point that out.
No, I know his ISO is higher, but also I have to consider I
don't disagree with your overall point. I was just pointing out that
Donovan
didn't have more power. He just had a higher average, is why the slugging comes out so much higher.
Daniel, what's one thing above all else you're hoping to see from Heim this year and his contingent as they take point on roster decisions?
I don't know that there's one thing per se. I think just picking a lane will be a nice thing to try to clear up some of this roster redundancies and things of that nature that, like I say, just, Brendan Donovan, Nolan Gorman, pick one and let's figure it out. But I'm also going to be very interested to see if we get a little bit more explanation about some things. Obviously Chaim Bloom did the press route right after his introductory press conference. Did a lot of interviews, did a lot of that. I'm going to be interested to see if he is more open to that kind of thing. We know Rob Cerfolio has done, I know he's been on, I think I've been on with y'all. He's been on with a number of people throughout this last year. And I feel like if these guys are going to be out there more, at least we will understand why they do what they do and get a better idea of what their future focus is, maybe more than we've gotten in the last few years.
Yeah, and speaking of getting more clarity, I think there was a moment in the Heim press conference that I wanted to ask Gabe about because he very outspokenly talked about it on Twitter whenever Bill DeWitt offered up that he and Heim have not spoken about the payroll. Gabe, I'll give you the opportunity to just kind of air out your frustrations whenever Bill DeWitt Jr. had said that he and Heim have not talked payroll yet.
I mean, they obviously have. Come on. Like, how could you possibly give the job to somebody and be like, by the way, we don't need to worry about what you have to work with to build the team at all.
Right.
I just can't imagine that hasn't been at least an oblique reference at some point. Like, I'm sure that, I'm sure they've talked around it in a way where he could justify saying we haven't talked payroll, but I just don't understand why you would just throw that out there and expect nobody to be like, wait, that doesn't sound right at all. Like, come on.
I will say we talked about this on Musial this week. My thinking on that, if that's true, which I get, it does seem kind of weird, is if they've talked in broad strokes, but I feel like right now the Cardinals aren't. I think the way Chaim Bloom is going to do this, he's more concerned with the money they're putting into the development and all that kind of stuff. And they're not close enough to worry about, we're going to be maxing out payroll because some of these big contracts coming off, especially if they get traded off, there's going to be room there and he's not going to be going out to the free agent market and getting a whole lot anyway. So I don't know that top number is as important as it has been in the past few years.
Sure. And that's how he could say that with a straight face is because he's like, I guess you're interchanging not you personally, but
right.
He like payroll and budget, right? They've definitely talked budget. Exactly. I don't know. Maybe the team payroll has been, but I feel like since he said if a big chunk of the payroll is traded, we will, use that money to get other people. That suggests that they probably have talked about that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably.
So I mean, I don't know. I just find it. I wish they just stop putting their foot in their mouths. I don't know how that to stop happening.
The more things change, the more they seem to stay the same. It's a wonderful place to be a Cardinal fan.
Yeah.
So, Daniel, I did want to ask you this. So you have put out this wonderful Google Doc kind of predicting who stays and who goes on the 40-man roster this year. And I think it's a really fun exercise just to see which fans, come out more right than the others, right? And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, not on every player, but the 3 no trade clause players. Where do you believe, what are your thoughts, stay or go, on each of the 3 no trade clause players?
Well, I mean, you don't have to take my word for it. You can. I will. I'm pulled up the numbers here because I've got. Right now, like Arenado, 42 people thought he was going to be here. 157 say he's gone. I think it's probably, especially with the comments that we saw at the end of the season and the way that they treated things. I think, and Nolan's openness to expanding what he wants to look at. I feel like there's going to probably find a way for that to happen. Sonny Gray, 103 people thought he would stay. 96 would say he's gone. So that's pretty much a 50-50 split. I still feel like they probably find a place for Gray because I think that as much as he may say, all the right things in public, I think with 1 year on the deal with an option after that, I still think that he's going to want to play someplace else in the, a little bit, if they can find the right situation. Granted, he's not going to just anywhere, right. But I think that he's probably gone. And then Contreras, 173 say he's here, 26 say he's gone. Yeah, I think that it really feels like,
well, 25 plus Kyle Reese.
Yeah, well, Kyle actually did change a few things.
Oh, did he? Oh, interesting.
He went back and redid his.
Okay.
So I'll give him a little bit of less grief than I normally do. But yeah, I think it's going to have to be just perfect for Contreras to leave, and I don't know what that is. If it's a situation where he's the one piece that puts somebody in the World Series, then he might. But I think he really seems to be focused on wanting to be a part of this development process, even if he's not here for the end. And I think that's a really interesting perspective for a player to have, is to say, hey, if y'all win the World Series in 2029, 2030, whatever it may be, and even if I've not been here, I can say I had a part of that because I helped you get to where you were going to be. I think that's interesting.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Who would be the most interesting answer, in your opinion, that you've seen so far? One that you kind of would have thought would have went one way and has kind of gone the complete opposite of the responses you've gotten so far?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of these are pretty. I mean, of course, we did the 40-man roster, so a lot of these guys, everybody expects to still be here, and that's fair enough. Donovan is a 121.78 here to go ratio. It's maybe a little bit more surprising that that he had that much of people thinking he was going to be gone. Other than that, I think Nootbaar may be the one here is most surprising. He's at 48 here, 151 gone. And, I think it's going to be some of these guys. It's just like, what's the market for these guys? Are you willing to sell low on them? Who's going to take them? And I think those are there's not a slam dunk situation where you've got a good guy that you want to trade. A lot of the guys you want to keep are good, and the ones you want to get rid of aren't. And that's not exactly easy to trade. And
because the Cardinals don't have like the sheer slam dunk type names, aside from perhaps a Sonny Gray, but that may be a separate, issue altogether. I'm afraid that the Cardinals are going to wind up a little bit like last offseason, where you have you are the other 29 teams or however many teams that are actually going to try. You're their contingency plan. So a player that's on your roster that isn't your number one target, but whoever is on the Cardinals might be 2, 3, 4 down the line. So I have a feeling that the Cardinals and Cardinals fans might be sitting here waiting a little bit for action to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that the Cardinals aren't going to be active this offseason. I fully expect them to do quite a bit, and there to be quite a bit of roster churn this offseason, especially compared to last offseason, which was just a cold, frozen tundra of nothingness that was so much fun to talk about. I know that, Meet Me at Musial, that was the most enjoyable part of the offseason, was talking about nothing.
I mean, never stopped us before.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Daniel, we sincerely appreciate you taking some time to join us tonight, and we look forward to having you back in the future.
Well, thank you. Always glad to do it, and would love to get back with y'all again some other time.
And once again, you can follow Daniel at C70 on X, and you can find his shows Meet Me at Musial and Gateway to Baseball Heaven on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you get your podcast content. For writers Scott Plaza and Gabe Simons and site manager Heather Simon, I am your host, Jake Wood, and we will talk to you all in 2 weeks with some very special guests. Have a great night, and thanks for listening. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Viva Albertos podcast. Please leave a rate and review on your favorite platform and turn on those bell notifications so you can be notified the moment our newest episode is released. As always, make sure to give us a follow on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Facebook. Just type in Viva Albertos on any platform to find us. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.